My daughter swapped my medication for vitamins. She didn't know I switched the bottles. I found the empty pill bottle in the kitchen trash on a Thursday morning while looking for the receipt I'd accidentally thrown away. The label said multivitamin complex, but what caught my attention was the way it had been stuffed deep beneath the coffee grounds and banana peels, hidden deliberately. My daughter Monica had never taken vitamins in her life. She'd always said they were a waste of money, that real food provided everything the body needed. I held the orange plastic container up to the light coming through the window above the sink and turned it slowly in my palm. The house was quiet. Monica had left 20 minutes earlier for her shift at the real estate office downtown, calling out her usual goodbye as the door clicked shut behind her. I lived alone in this 3-bedroom colonial since Margaret passed 4 years ago, though Monica had been spending more time here lately. Helping out, she said, making sure I was taking care of myself. At 73, I suppose I should have been grateful for the attention. Instead, something cold had been growing in my chest for weeks, a suspicion I'd been trying to ignore. I pulled the bottle from the trash and rinsed it under the tap. The prescription number was partially visible beneath the smeared coffee grounds. I set it on the counter and walked to my bedroom, where my actual medications sat in their organized weekly dispenser on the nightstand. Margaret had bought me that dispenser years ago when my prescriptions first started piling up. Heart medication, blood pressure pills, cholesterol management, the usual collection for a man my age with a history of cardiac problems. I picked up the Monday slot and shook out the pills into my palm. 3 of them. One was distinctly different from the others, smaller and a different shade of white. I carried them back to the kitchen and found my reading glasses on the counter. Under the bright overhead light, I examined each pill carefully. 2 matched my prescriptions exactly. The third did not. My hands were steady as I returned the pills to the dispenser and opened the drawer where Monica kept her things. She'd been staying over more frequently these past 2 months, ever since I'd mentioned during Sunday dinner that I'd been feeling unusually tired. The drawer held her spare reading glasses, some loose change, a few hair ties. And there, pushed toward the back, was a second empty vitamin bottle. This one hadn't even been thrown away yet. I stood in my kitchen for a long time after that, watching dust particles drift through the morning sunlight. The coffee maker burbled and hissed on the counter, the same sound it had made every morning for 15 years. Everything looked the same as it always did. The same yellow curtains Margaret had chosen, the same wooden table where we'd eaten breakfast together for 37 years of marriage, the same refrigerator covered in outdated calendars and fading photographs. But something fundamental had shifted, like a hairline crack appearing in a foundation you'd always trusted to be solid. I poured my coffee and sat at the table. My daughter was trying to kill me. The thought arrived with the calm, methodical certainty of a diagnosis. Not kill me violently or quickly, but through calculated neglect. By replacing my heart medication with vitamins, she was gambling that my age and medical history would do the work for her. A stroke, perhaps, or another heart attack more severe than the mild one I'd survived 3 years ago. It would look natural, tragic, but not suspicious. An elderly man with a history of heart problems succumbing to the inevitable. I forced myself to think through the timeline. When had this started? The fatigue I'd been experiencing, that unusual tiredness I'd attributed to age and grief. When had that begun? I pulled out my desk calendar, the paper kind I'd always preferred over digital versions. Flipping back through the pages, I marked the days I'd noted feeling particularly exhausted. Early September, nearly 3 months ago. 3 months of progressive weakening while my blood remained unprotected from the clots my damaged heart was prone to forming. 3 months during which Monica had been increasingly attentive, stopping by more frequently, insisting on organizing my medications, making sure I took them. Of course she wanted to make sure I took them. She needed me compliant, needed me to ingest her substitutions faithfully, needed the plan to run its course without interference. I thought back to conversations we'd had over those months. She'd suggested I seemed forgetful. Had I considered that maybe my medications were affecting my cognition? Perhaps we should talk to Dr. Reston about adjusting dosages. Looking back now, I could see the architecture of her manipulation. She'd been building a narrative of decline, establishing a pattern that would make my eventual death seem expected, even inevitable. The coffee had gone cold in my cup. I poured it out and made a fresh pot, needing the ritual of familiar actions while my mind processed this new reality. Margaret would have known what to do. She'd always been better at reading people, at seeing beneath surfaces to the truth underneath. I'd been the engineer, the problem solver, the man who understood systems and structures. People had been her specialty. What would she have seen in Monica that I'd missed? Were there signs over the years, indicators I'd dismissed or rationalized? I forced myself to examine our daughter with new eyes, stripping away parental bias and wishful thinking. Monica had always been ambitious. That wasn't necessarily negative, but her ambition had come with a certain ruthlessness. In high school, she'd had no qualms about sabotaging a classmate's science project to ensure her own won the competition. In college, she'd dated a teaching assistant to secure better grades, then dropped him the moment the semester ended. Her real estate career had been built on aggressive tactics that occasionally crossed ethical lines, though never quite far enough to be illegal. I'd told myself these were just the marks of someone driven to succeed in a competitive world. Now I wondered if I'd been making excuses, seeing what I wanted to see rather than what was actually there. The doorbell rang, interrupting my thoughts. I glanced at the clock. 10:30. I wasn't expecting anyone. Through the front window, I could see Arthur from next door standing on my porch, holding what looked like a casserole dish. I opened the door. Arthur was 78, a retired postal worker who'd lived in the neighborhood longer than anyone. His wife had died 2 years before Margaret, and we'd formed the kind of friendship that develops between men who understand loss. "Morning, Frank. Linda made too much lasagna last night. You know how my daughter is, always cooking like she's feeding an army. Thought you might like some." Linda was Arthur's daughter, who visited every weekend to make sure her father was eating properly. I took the offered dish, still warm, and invited him in for coffee. We sat at my kitchen table, the same table where I'd just been contemplating my daughter's betrayal. Arthur added cream to his coffee and stirred it slowly, the spoon clinking against the ceramic in a steady rhythm. "You look troubled, Frank. Everything all right?" I'd known Arthur long enough to trust him, but I wasn't ready to share what I'd discovered. Not yet. Not until I had more evidence, more certainty. Just thinking about Monica. Wondering if I really know her as well as I think I do. Arthur nodded slowly. "That's the thing about kids. You raise them, you think you understand them, and then they grow up and become people you don't always recognize." He paused, considering his words. "Linda tells me Monica's been spending a lot of time here lately. She says she's worried about me, wants to make sure I'm taking care of myself." "And is she? Taking care of you, I mean?" The question hung in the air between us. Arthur was watching me with the careful attention of someone who sensed something unspoken. "I'm not sure," I said finally. "I'm still figuring that out." He finished his coffee and stood to leave. At the door, he turned back. "Frank, if you ever need anything, and I mean anything at all, you know where I am. Some things are too big to handle alone." After he left, I realized I'd just been offered help by someone who suspected something was wrong. Arthur had always been perceptive. Perhaps he'd noticed things I'd missed, seen interactions between Monica and me that had raised quiet alarms. I spent the rest of the morning going through financial records. My bank statements showed regular withdrawals Monica had made using the debit card I'd given her for emergencies and household purchases. Most were reasonable. Groceries, pharmacy copays, occasional dinners out, but there were others that made less sense. Cash withdrawals in amounts of $200 or $300 made weekly for the past 6 months. What was she doing with that cash? I made a list of the withdrawals, noting dates and amounts. Nearly $8,000 over 6 months. That was significant money, especially for someone who claimed to be worried about my finances and suggesting I needed to cut costs. My phone buzzed with a text from Monica. "Just checking in. How are you feeling today? Do you need me to pick anything up on my way over tonight?" I stared at the message for a long moment before responding. "Feeling fine. No need to come over tonight. I have plans." Her response came quickly. Plans? That's great, Dad. What are you doing? Dinner with Arthur and some other neighbors. We're trying to organize a monthly dinner club. Nothing to worry about. The lie came easily. I needed space, needed time to think without her presence in my house, without having to maintain the pretense that everything was normal. Sounds fun. Let me know how it goes. Love you. Love you too, I typed back, the words feeling hollow and strange. The why was obvious. Money. Always money. Monica had been making pointed comments lately about the cost of my medications, the burden of the house upkeep, how much easier it would be if I moved into one of those senior communities. She had also been asking questions about my will, about the life insurance policy Margaret and I had taken out decades ago, about whether I'd updated my estate planning recently. At the time, I'd thought she was just being practical, helping me get my affairs in order like any responsible daughter would. Now those conversations took on a different color entirely. The memory of one conversation in particular came back to me with sharp clarity. We'd been sitting in the same kitchen about a month ago, and Monica had mentioned an article she'd read about elder care facilities. They're not like they used to be, Dad, she'd said, sliding a glossy brochure across the table toward me. Look at this place. It's more like a resort than a nursing home. They have activities, social events, full medical staff on site. I'd glanced at the brochure without much interest. I'm not ready for a nursing home, Monica. I'm managing fine here. It's not a nursing home, it's independent living, and you wouldn't have to worry about maintaining the house, doing yard work, all those things that are getting harder. She'd paused, then added casually, plus, selling this house would free up significant capital. You could use that money to really enjoy your retirement. Or you could inherit it sooner, I'd said, meaning it as a joke. But Monica hadn't laughed. She just smiled tightly and said, That's not what this is about, Dad. I'm thinking about your quality of life. Now I wondered how many of her suggestions over the past year had been about my quality of life versus her financial planning. The vacation I should take, spending money while I could still enjoy it, the expensive repairs I should skip, since who knew how much longer I'd even be in the house, the life insurance policy I should increase, just to make sure everything was covered. Every suggestion had been wrapped in concern, in daughterly love and practical wisdom. But underneath, had there been calculations? A spreadsheet of my declining value versus her potential inheritance? I finished my coffee and made breakfast, forcing myself to eat even though I had no appetite. I needed to stay strong, stay clear-headed. This wasn't the time to let my health actually decline while I figured out what to do about Monica's attempts to hasten that decline. After breakfast, I drove to the bank. I needed to understand my finances completely, needed to know exactly what Monica would stand to gain from my death. The bank manager, Christine Reeves, had handled my accounts for years. She greeted me warmly and led me to a private office. What can I do for you today, Frank? I need a complete accounting of all my assets, everything. Checking, savings, retirement accounts, investment portfolios, and I need to review who has access to these accounts. Christine's expression shifted slightly, becoming more professional. Of course. Is there a problem? I'm not sure yet, but I need to understand my financial situation completely. Can you pull all of that together for me? She worked on her computer for several minutes, occasionally asking questions about specific accounts or transactions. Finally, she printed out a thick stack of papers and handed them across the desk. This is everything. Your total liquid assets are approximately $480,000. Your retirement accounts add another $560,000. Your home is valued at approximately $350,000, though, of course, that would depend on current market conditions. I did the mental math. Nearly $1.4 million, not counting my life insurance policies, which totaled another $750,000. Over $2 million total that Monica expected to inherit. And who currently has access to these accounts? Christine consulted her screen. You have a joint account with your daughter, Monica Morrison. It's a checking account with approximately $12,000 in it, established 3 years ago. She has full access to that account, can withdraw or transfer funds without your signature. 3 years ago, right after Margaret died, Monica had suggested the joint account as a way to help me manage bills and expenses during my grief. I'd thought it was thoughtful, practical. Now I realized she'd been establishing access, setting up mechanisms for control. I want her removed from that account, today, and I want alerts set up on all my other accounts. Any transaction over $500 should require my explicit approval, and I should receive immediate notification of all account activity. Christine made notes. I can do that. Frank, should I be concerned about potential fraud? I'm taking precautions. That's all I can say right now. Back at home, I began documenting everything. I created a detailed timeline, marking when Monica had started staying over more frequently, when I'd first noticed the fatigue, when the conversations about my estate planning had begun intensifying. I printed out bank statements showing the unusual cash withdrawals. I made copies of my medication labels and photographed the empty vitamin bottles I'd found. Then, I sat down at my computer and began researching. What I found chilled me more than I'd expected. Elder financial abuse was surprisingly common, particularly from adult children. The patterns were depressingly familiar. Increased control over the elderly parent's finances, isolation from friends and other family members, manipulation of medications to create dependency or hasten decline. I found forum posts from other elderly people who discovered similar betrayals. Their stories were heartbreaking. Children who'd drained bank accounts, grandchildren who'd forged signatures on deeds and titles, family members who'd simply waited patiently for inheritance while doing everything possible to speed the process along. In one forum thread, someone had posted, "The hardest part isn't the money. It's realizing that the person you raised, the child you loved and sacrificed for, sees you as nothing more than an obstacle to overcome." I closed the laptop and sat in the gathering darkness of my living room, those words echoing in my mind. Monica hadn't always been this person. Or had she? Had I simply never looked closely enough to see what was really there? I remembered her at 6 years old, crying because she'd accidentally broken her favorite doll. At 12, furious and devastated when she didn't make the basketball team. At 16, coldly cutting off a friend who'd embarrassed her at a party. At 23, ending a 3-year relationship via text message because she'd met someone who could better advance her career. Each memory, isolated, had seemed like normal human behavior. Together, they formed a pattern I'd refused to see. Monica had always prioritized herself, her needs, her desires. She'd always been willing to do whatever was necessary to get what she wanted. I'd told myself she was driven, ambitious, strong. Now I wondered if I'd been using those words to avoid acknowledging something darker. The phone rang, making me jump. I checked the caller ID, Monica. I let it go to voicemail, not trusting myself to maintain normalcy in conversation with her. A few minutes later, I listened to her message. "Hey, Dad, just wanted to check in again. I know you said you had dinner plans, but I'm a little worried. You don't usually make plans without mentioning them to me. First, call me back when you get this, okay? I love you." The concern in her voice sounded so genuine. If I hadn't known what I knew, I would have been touched by her attentiveness. Instead, I heard something else underneath the words. A need to know where I was, what I was doing, whether I was talking to people who might notice my declining health and ask questions. I didn't call her back. Instead, I called Dr. Reston's emergency line. When he answered, I explained what I'd discovered and what I needed. "Frank, this is extremely serious. If someone has been tampering with your anticoagulant medication, you're at significant risk for thrombosis, stroke, or another cardiac event. You need to come in immediately." "I will, first thing tomorrow. But tonight, I need to know what I should do." "Do you have any of the medication left that hasn't been tampered with?" "I don't think so. Everything in my dispenser is suspect." Dr. Reston was quiet for a moment. "I'm going to call in an emergency prescription to the pharmacy near you. Pick it up tonight. Take the proper dose as soon as you get it. And Frank, I'm also going to prescribe you a medication that will help protect against clot formation in the short term. This is a stopgap until we can get you properly stabilized. Thank you. And Frank, we need to discuss what to do about your daughter. This isn't just elder abuse. If she's deliberately withholding necessary cardiac medication, we're potentially talking about attempted murder." The words hung in the air between us. Attempted murder. My daughter, who I'd held as an infant, who I'd taught to ride a bike and drive a car and balance a checkbook, was potentially guilty of attempted murder. "I know," I said quietly. "I'm handling it." After I hung up, I drove to the pharmacy and picked up the emergency prescriptions. The pharmacist gave me careful instructions and made me repeat them back to ensure I understood. I took the first dose in my car, sitting in the parking lot as evening shoppers walked past with their carts and bags, going about their ordinary lives while mine crumbled around me. When I got home, I hid the new medications in a locked box in my bedroom closet, behind old tax returns Monica would have no reason to search through. Then I sat down and began writing out everything I knew, creating a clear narrative that could serve as evidence if something happened to me. I wrote about finding the vitamin bottles, about testing my medications, about Monica's notebook and her financial calculations. I wrote about the increased cash withdrawals and her attempts to control my finances. I wrote about every suspicious conversation, every manipulation, every red flag I'd missed or dismissed. The document was 15 pages long by the time I finished. I saved multiple copies, emailed one to myself at an account Monica didn't know about, and printed a hard copy that I placed in an envelope addressed to my lawyer. Then, and only then, did I allow myself to feel the full weight of what I was facing. My daughter, my only child, the person who was supposed to love me unconditionally, wanted me dead. Not out of hatred or rage, but for simple financial gain. I was worth more to her dead than alive, and she'd made her choice accordingly. I finished my coffee and checked the time. Monica wouldn't be home until after 6. That gave me 8 hours to think, to plan, and most importantly, to verify what I'd found. I was a mechanical engineer before I retired, spent 40 years designing systems and solving problems. This was just another problem that needed solving, and I would approach it the same way I'd approached every complicated project in my career, methodically, carefully, and with absolute precision. The first step was confirmation. I needed to know for certain that what I suspected was true, and I needed evidence. I called Dr. Reston's office and made an appointment for the following day, telling the receptionist it was urgent, but not emergency level. Then, I gathered every pill from my weekly dispenser, separated them by type, and placed them in small, labeled envelopes. If any of these were wrong, the pharmacy could test them. Next, I searched Monica's room. I felt no guilt about this. She was living in my house, potentially trying to kill me. Privacy seemed like a distant concern. Her room was neat, organized with the same precision she brought to her real estate career. The closet held her work clothes arranged by color. The dresser drawers contained carefully folded items. Nothing seemed out of place until I checked the back of her nightstand drawer. There, wrapped in a cloth napkin, were 3 more empty vitamin bottles, all the same brand as the ones I'd found in the trash, and beneath them, a small spiral notebook. I opened it with hands that had begun to shake slightly. The notebook contained calculations. My life insurance payout amount written at the top of the first page. Below that, a breakdown of my assets, the house value, my retirement accounts, my savings, everything itemized with disturbing accuracy. On the next page, she'd written dates, the date she'd started replacing my medication, marked with a small check. Expected timeline, she'd written beneath it, followed by a range. 3 to 6 months, depending on compliance and stress factors. Compliance, as if I were a participant in some clinical trial, as if my death were just another real estate transaction to be managed and closed. I photographed every page with my phone, replaced the notebook exactly as I'd found it, and returned the empty bottles to their cloth wrapper. Then I sat on her bed for a moment, breathing carefully, waiting for the anger to subside into something more useful. Anger wouldn't help me now. What I needed was cold calculation, the same quality my daughter had apparently inherited from me, though she'd chosen to apply it in ways I'd never imagined. Monica arrived home at 6:15 carrying takeout from the Chinese restaurant we both liked. She smiled when she saw me in the living room, that same warm smile I'd seen since she was a child. "Hey, Dad, I brought your favorite, Kung Pao chicken and those spring rolls you like." That's thoughtful, I said, accepting the bag. How was work? Exhausting. 3 showings today, and 2 of the clients were impossible to please. She dropped onto the couch beside me, kicking off her heels. How are you feeling? You took your medications this morning, right? Every single one, I said, watching her face carefully. Just like clockwork. Good. That's good. She patted my knee. I worry about you, especially with your heart. You have to be so careful at your age. I know. I'm grateful you're here to help keep me on track. We ate dinner together in front of the television, watching the evening news and making occasional comments about the state of the world. Monica laughed at the right moments, asked about my day, told me stories about difficult clients and competitive bidding wars. She looked like my daughter, sounded like my daughter, behaved in every way like the woman who'd grown up in this house and eaten dinner at this table thousands of times. But she wasn't that person anymore. Or perhaps she'd always been this person, and I'd simply been too blind or too trusting to see it. After she went upstairs for the night, I opened the kitchen drawer where I kept instruction manuals and warranty papers. Beneath them was the folder containing my will, my life insurance documents, and all my estate planning paperwork. I photographed every page, then returned them exactly as they'd been. In the morning, I kept my appointment with Dr. Reeston. He examined me thoroughly, ran some quick tests, and listened to my concerns about my medication, effectiveness with the serious attention he'd always given my health matters. I want to test these, I said, handing him the labeled envelopes. I need to know exactly what I've been taking. Dr. Reston looked at the envelopes, then at me. He'd been my physician for 20 years, had guided me through my heart attack and recovery, had sat with Margaret and me when we learned her cancer was terminal. He knew me well enough to understand that I wouldn't make this kind of request without reason. Is there something specific you're concerned about, Frank? Just call it due diligence. I want to make sure there haven't been any pharmacy errors. He nodded slowly. The pharmacy can test these for us. It'll take a few days, but we'll get you definitive results. In the meantime, I'm going to write you fresh prescriptions. Pick these up today and start taking them. Don't touch anything from your current supply. Already planning on it. Frank. He leaned forward, his expression serious. If something's wrong, if someone's interfering with your medications, that's not just dangerous. It's criminal. You need to tell me. What's happening? Not yet. Not until I'm certain. But soon. I picked up the fresh prescriptions at the pharmacy that afternoon, using a different location than my usual one. The pharmacist gave me a 2-week supply, which I stored in a locked box in my bedroom closet. Then, I did something that would have seemed paranoid just days earlier. I set up a small camera on my bookshelf, angled to capture my nightstand and medication dispenser. The camera was marketed for home security, designed to look like an ordinary book spine. I'd ordered it online that morning and paid for expedited shipping. Monica came home that evening with groceries. She made us a simple dinner of grilled chicken and salad, chattering about a new listing she'd secured in an upscale neighborhood. After we ate, she insisted on helping me with my evening medications. Here you go, Dad. She shook the pills from my dispenser into a small dish. Have you been feeling okay? No chest pains or unusual tiredness? I've been a little more tired than usual, I said, which was true. The stress of the past few days had taken its toll. But nothing alarming. Still, you should mention it to Dr. Reston. Maybe your dosage needs adjusting. She watched as I reached for the pills, her expression attentive and concerned. I palmed the pills with a practiced motion I'd spent the afternoon perfecting and pretended to swallow them with water. All done. Good. She collected the dish and rinsed it in the sink. I'm going to run to the store. Do you need anything? No, I'm fine. Take your time. The moment her car pulled out of the driveway, I spit the pills into my hand and examined them under the kitchen light. 2 were correct. 1 was not. I placed all 3 in a small plastic bag and labeled it with the date and time, then added it to the growing collection of evidence I was building. The camera recording would show everything. Monica coming into my room after I'd gone to bed, carefully opening my medication dispenser, removing the real pills and replacing them with vitamins. The footage would be time-stamped and clear. But I needed more than video evidence. I needed her to reveal herself completely, to demonstrate intent beyond any possible doubt. Over the next week, I played the role of an elderly man in declining health. I moved more slowly, complained of fatigue and occasional dizziness. I asked Monica to help me with tasks I could easily do myself. I let her schedule a follow-up with Dr. Reston, which I then quietly rescheduled on my own after she'd confirmed the appointment. Dr. Reston called on Thursday with the lab results. "Frank, you were right to be concerned. The pills you gave me for testing, one of your medications had been completely replaced with a basic multivitamin. The heart medication you need to prevent clotting wasn't there at all. How long before that becomes dangerous? You've been off this medication for how long? Possibly 2 months?" His silence was heavy. "Frank, you could have had a stroke. You still could if you don't resume the proper medication immediately. This isn't something to take lightly. Someone deliberately tampered with your prescriptions. You need to contact the police." "I will, but I need to handle this my way first. I need to understand why." "You already know why." "I need her to admit it." Dr. Reston sighed. "Be careful, and stay on those new medications I prescribed. Don't deviate from them for any reason." "I won't." That evening, I called my lawyer, David Brennan. David and I had played golf together for years before my heart condition made 18 holes too strenuous. He listened to my story without interruption, his breathing the only sound through the phone. "Jesus, Frank, your own daughter? I need you to do 2 things for me. First, I want to change my will. Leave everything to charity. The hospital foundation that took care of Margaret, the Cardiac Research Center. Nothing goes to Monica, nothing. Consider it done. What's the second thing? I need you to be present for a family dinner, Sunday night. I'm going to confront her, and I need a witness." "You want me to just sit there while you tell your daughter you know she's trying to kill you?" "That's exactly what I want, along with documentation, video evidence, and her confession on record. I want this airtight before we contact the authorities." "Frank, this is dangerous. She's already shown she's willing to let you die. What if she escalates?" "She won't. Monica is calculating, not violent. She wants my death to look natural. Confrontation doesn't serve her purpose. And besides, you'll be there. So will my neighbor Arthur. I'm going to ask him to join us as well. Safety in numbers." David agreed reluctantly and promised to have the new will ready by Saturday. The conversation with Arthur was more difficult. I found him in his backyard the next afternoon, raking leaves into neat piles. The autumn air was crisp and clean, carrying the scent of wood smoke from someone's fireplace. "Arthur, I need your help with something, and I need you to hear me out before you make any judgments." He leaned the rake against a tree and gave me his full attention. "Go ahead, Frank." I told him everything. The vitamin bottles, the medication testing, the notebook with financial calculations, the video footage I'd collected. I watched his expression shift from concern to disbelief to quiet anger as the full scope of what Monica had done became clear. "My God, Frank, how long has this been going on?" "At least 3 months, possibly longer. I didn't start keeping track until recently." Arthur sat down heavily on his back steps. "I knew something was off. I've seen her coming and going at odd hours, saw her taking bags of trash to her car instead of leaving them for pickup. I thought maybe she was just being helpful, cleaning out your garage or something. But she was hiding the evidence, wasn't she? Those vitamin bottles. That's my assumption. What are you going to do?" "I'm going to confront her. Sunday night at dinner. I need witnesses there when I do it. People who can testify that I was sound mind, that I wasn't confused or manipulated. I need David for the legal side. And I need you because you've observed Monica's behavior around me. You've seen things I might have missed." Arthur nodded slowly. "I'll be there. But Frank, you need to understand what you're asking. That girl is going to be destroyed when you expose this. She'll either break down completely or come out fighting. Either way, it won't be pretty." "I know, but it has to be done. I won't let her get away with this, and I won't let her spend the next however many years waiting for another opportunity." "What if she tries to leave? To run before you can confront her?" "She won't. As far as she knows, I'm still taking the fake medications. She thinks she's winning. People who think they're winning don't run. They get comfortable. They get careless. She's already been careless with those Instagram-level calculations in her notebook and the sloppy disposal of evidence. She'll stay because she thinks there's no threat." Arthur stood and put a hand on my shoulder. "You're stronger than you look, old friend. Most men your age would just let this go, too tired or too heartbroken to fight." But you're fighting. I don't have a choice. If I don't fight, I die. It's that simple. I spent Friday preparing for Sunday's dinner. I cleaned the house, not because it needed it, but because the familiar routine helped me think. I also spent time reviewing the camera footage, watching my daughter enter my room night after night, carefully tampering with my medications. Her movements were efficient, practiced. She'd clearly been doing this for weeks, maybe longer than I had initially suspected. The footage showed something else, too. Sometimes, after switching the pill, she'd stand at my bedside for a moment, watching me sleep. Her expression in those moments was difficult to read in the low light. Not quite regret, but not quite satisfaction either. Something in between, perhaps, a complex mixture of guilt and determination and cold calculation. Whatever humanity remained in her was still visible in those quiet moments, still wrestling with what she was doing, but not wrestling hard enough to stop her. I found myself watching those sections repeatedly, trying to understand the woman my daughter had become. Was she lying awake at night, tormented by guilt, or was she sleeping soundly, confident in her plan? Did she rationalize it somehow, tell herself I was old and dying anyway, that she was just accelerating the inevitable? Or did she simply not think about it at all, compartmentalizing this act of slow murder the same way she'd compartmentalize any unpleasant business transaction? On Saturday morning, David arrived with the new will. We sat in my kitchen while he walked me through every clause, every provision, every detail. The document was thorough and unambiguous. Upon my death, my entire estate would be divided among 3 charitable organizations: the Cardiac Research Foundation at the hospital where I'd been treated, the hospice care facility that had helped Margaret in her final weeks, and a scholarship fund for first-generation college students at the university Monica and I both attended. "She'll fight this," David warned. "She can contest the will, claim you weren't in your right mind when you changed it, claim I exerted undue influence. Let her try. We'll have medical documentation that I'm mentally competent. We'll have Dr. Reston's testimony. We'll have the evidence of what she did and why I changed it. No judge is going to side with someone who tried to kill their father for inheritance money." David nodded, but his expression remained concerned. "Frank, there's something else we need to discuss. When you confront Monica tomorrow night, when you show her this evidence and tell her she's out of the will, you're taking away her motive to keep you alive. Right now, she has a reason to be patient, to let the fake medications do their work slowly. Once she knows there's no inheritance coming, what's to stop her from becoming desperate, from taking more direct action?" The thought had occurred to me, but I'd pushed it aside. Now, faced with David's direct question, I had to confront it honestly. "You're right," I said. "Once she knows, she has nothing left to lose, which is why I'm not spending another night alone in this house with her. After the confrontation, she's going to leave. I'll have you and Arthur there to make sure of it, and I'm changing the locks immediately afterward. I've already arranged for a locksmith to be on standby." "What about her keys?" "I'll demand them back during the confrontation. If she refuses, the locks get changed anyway. Either way, she doesn't get back in this house." David made notes on his legal pad. "I'll draw up an immediate restraining order. As soon as we have her admission on record, we can file it. The police will serve her with it, and if she violates it, she'll be arrested." "Do it." After David left, I called the police non-emergency line and asked to speak with someone about elder abuse. They transferred me to Detective Sarah Chen, who listened to my preliminary explanation with professional attention. "Mr. Morrison, what you're describing is very serious. We'd like to send an officer to take a formal statement." "Not yet. I need to confront my daughter first, need to get her admission on record. But I wanted you to know what's coming, so you'll be ready when I do file a formal complaint." "Sir, if someone is actively trying to harm you, we need to intervene immediately." "I understand, but I've taken precautions. I have new, untampered medications that I'm taking properly. I have video evidence of the tampering. I have documentation of everything. What I need now is her admission, her confession. I need her to tell me why she did this. I need to hear her say it." Detective Chen was quiet for a moment. "This is about more than just prosecuting her, isn't it? This is personal. You need to understand what happened to your daughter, how she became someone capable of this." "Yes." "All right. But Mr. Morrison, I want you to call me immediately after this confrontation happens. Don't wait, don't hesitate. The moment she's out of your house, you call me. We'll come take your statement, collect your evidence, and start building the case. Understand? I understand. Thank you, Detective. Saturday afternoon, I visited Margaret's grave. The cemetery was quiet, autumn leaves covering the ground in shades of amber and brown. I sat on the stone bench beside her headstone and spoke to her the way I'd done hundreds of times since her death. Our daughter's trying to kill me, Maggie. I still can't quite believe it, even with all the evidence. I keep thinking I'll wake up and discover this was just some horrible nightmare, but it's real. She's really doing this. A breeze moved through the trees, scattering leaves across the grass. I don't know where we went wrong with her. We gave her everything: love, education, support. We taught her right from wrong. We modeled kindness and integrity. Or at least, I thought we did. Maybe I was too focused on work when she was growing up. Maybe you were too soft on her when she misbehaved. Maybe we failed her somehow, and this is the result. I pulled my jacket tighter against the cold. But I also know that we can't take all the blame. Monica made choices. She chose greed over love. She chose money over family. She chose to see her father as an obstacle rather than a person. Those were her choices, not ours. We didn't make her this way. She made herself this way. The wind picked up, and I watched clouds move across the gray sky. Tomorrow I'm going to confront her. I'm going to show her that I know what she's done. I'm going to watch her face when she realizes her plan has failed, and then I'm going to cut her out of my life completely. No inheritance, no relationship, no forgiveness, just a clean break and legal consequences. I stood, my knees protesting the movement. I wish you were here, Maggie. You always knew what to say, how to handle difficult situations. I'm just an old engineer who's good at solving mechanical problems. People problems were your specialty, but I'll do my best. I'll handle this the only way I know how, methodically, carefully, and with absolute certainty about what's right. I touched her headstone gently, then walked back to my car. Sunday morning arrived cold and gray. I woke early, dressed carefully in slacks and a button-down shirt, and made breakfast. Monica came downstairs around 9, already dressed for the day in casual clothes. "Morning, Dad. Sleep okay?" "Well enough. Listen, I want to have a family dinner tonight. Nothing fancy, just something to bring us together. Would you mind helping me cook?" Her eyes brightened. "Of course, that sounds lovely. What are you thinking?" "Your mother's pot roast, the one she always made for special occasions." "Perfect. I'll pick up everything we need. And Monica, I've invited David Brennan and Arthur from next door, just to round out the table. You don't mind, do you?" A flicker of something crossed her face, too quick to identify. "No, of course not. The more the merrier." We spent the afternoon in the kitchen together, preparing Margaret's recipe. Monica chopped vegetables while I seasoned the meat. We worked side by side, the same way she'd helped her mother with this same dish countless times over the years. She told stories about clients, asked about my week, laughed at my dry observations about the state of modern home buying. It all felt so normal, so comfortable, that I had to keep reminding myself what I knew, what she'd done, what she was still planning. David arrived at 5:30, carrying a bottle of wine. Arthur came shortly after with a store-bought pie. Monica greeted them warmly, playing the perfect hostess. She set the table with Margaret's good china, lit candles, made sure everyone had drinks. We sat down to dinner at 6, and for the first 20 minutes, everything was pleasant. We ate and talked and laughed at Arthur's stories about his grandchildren. Then I set down my fork and looked at my daughter. "Monica, there's something I need to discuss with you, something important." She looked up, smile still in place. "Sure, Dad. What's on your mind?" "I've been feeling poorly lately. More tired than usual, some dizziness, some chest discomfort. It's been worrying me." Concern flooded her face. "Dad, you should have told me. Have you called Dr. Reston?" "I did. In fact, I saw him recently. He ran some tests, checked my medications." I paused, watching her carefully. "He found something interesting." The room had gone very quiet. Arthur and David had stopped eating, sensing the shift in atmosphere. "What did he find?" Monica's voice was steady, but her hand had tightened on her water glass. Apparently, someone has been tampering with my prescriptions, replacing my heart medication with basic vitamins for at least 2 months. Monica's face went pale. That's terrible. How could something like that happen? Did the pharmacy make a mistake? No mistake. This was deliberate. Someone broke into my medication dispenser and systematically switched my pills night after night. Someone who had access to my house, to my bedroom. Someone who knew exactly which medication to target. Dad, what are you saying? I pulled out my phone and opened the video footage. I turned the screen toward her so she could see herself clear as day, standing beside my bed and tampering with my pills. Her face in the video was focused, intent. There was no mistaking what she was doing. Monica stared at the screen. The color had drained from her face completely now, leaving her complexion waxy in the candlelight. Where did you get this? I installed a camera when I first began to suspect what was happening. This is from last Thursday night. I have footage from every night for the past week, and Dr. Reston has the lab results confirming that what I've been taking isn't what I'm prescribed. She opened her mouth, closed it, then tried again. Dad, I can explain. Please do. I'm very interested in your explanation. You have to understand, I was just trying to help. You've been taking so many medications, and I read this article about how sometimes vitamins can be just as effective without all the side effects. And I thought, you thought you'd conduct your own medical experiment on your father without his knowledge or consent? Monica, do you understand how close I came to having another stroke? How dangerous this was? Tears were forming in her eyes now, real tears or a performance. I couldn't tell anymore. I didn't think it through. I was scared you were taking too many pills, that they were hurting you more than helping. I know it was wrong. I know that now. But I swear I was just trying to protect you. Then why didn't you talk to me about it? Why sneak around behind my back? Because I knew you'd say no. You always say no when I suggest changes to your routine. I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out her notebook, the one with all her calculations. I set it on the table between us. And what about this? Were you also trying to protect me when you calculated how much money you'd receive from my death? Monica's eyes went wide. She looked at the notebook, then at me, then at David and Arthur. That's not what it looks like. It looks like a ledger of my assets and a timeline for my expected death. What else could it possibly be? I was planning for the future, for what happens after you're gone. Every responsible child does that. It doesn't mean I wanted you to die. But you were accelerating the timeline. By replacing my medication, you were gambling that my heart condition would eventually kill me. And you were betting on it happening within 3 to 6 months. You wrote it down, Monica. I have photographs of every page. She stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. This is insane. You're twisting everything. Yes, I switched your pills, but only because I thought I was helping. And yes, I've thought about inheritance, but only because I need to plan for my own financial future. There's nothing sinister about any of this. Sit down, I said quietly. Something in my tone made her obey. She sank back into her chair, hands shaking now. I've changed my will, I continued. David helped me do that yesterday. You're not in it anymore, Monica. Everything goes to charity. The house, the life insurance, the retirement accounts, all of it. You get nothing. Her face crumpled. Dad, please. You can't do this. I already have. And tomorrow morning, David and I will be going to the police with all of this evidence, the video footage, the lab results, your notebook, the empty vitamin bottles I found, all of it. You're going to be charged with elder abuse at minimum, possibly attempted murder. No. The word came out as barely a whisper. Please, Dad, I'll fix this. I'll do anything. I'll get help. I'll see a therapist. Just, please don't do this. I looked at my daughter, this woman I'd raised and loved and trusted, and felt something break inside my chest that had nothing to do with my heart condition. You had chances to fix this, Monica. Every single night when you stood beside my bed and tampered with my medication, you had a chance to stop, to confess, to do the right thing. You chose not to. Over and over again, you chose to continue. Arthur spoke up for the first time, his voice gentle. Frank, are you sure about this? She's your daughter. She's also someone who was willing to let me die for money. That's not a daughter. That's a stranger wearing my daughter's face. Monica was sobbing now, her hands covering her face. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I don't know what happened to me. I got so focused on the money, on my problems, on what I needed. I lost sight of everything else. But I love you, Dad. I do. I never wanted to actually hurt you. But you were hurting me. Every day that I didn't have my proper medication, you were hurting me. And you knew it. That notebook proves you understood exactly what you were doing and what the likely outcome would be. David cleared his throat. Frank, for what it's worth, she could face serious prison time for this, 10 years or more, depending on how the prosecutor wants to charge it. Good. Monica looked up at me, mascara running down her cheeks. You really hate me that much? I don't hate you at all. That's the tragedy in all of this. I love you. I've loved you since the moment you were born, but I can't trust you. I can't have you in my life knowing what you're capable of, and I certainly can't let you get away with attempting to kill me. She stood again, this time backing toward the door. I need to leave. I need to think. Your things will be packed by tomorrow. You're no longer welcome in this house. Dad? Leave, Monica. Now. She grabbed her purse from the hallway table and stumbled toward the door. Before she left, she turned back one last time. I really am sorry, for whatever that's worth. It's worth nothing, I said, because you're not sorry you did it. You're just sorry you got caught. The door closed behind her, and the house fell silent. Arthur, David, and I sat at the table surrounded by the remains of Margaret's pot roast, the candle still burning, the good china reflecting flickering light. That was brutal, Arthur said finally. It needed to be. David was making notes on a legal pad. I'll file everything with the police first thing tomorrow morning. With this amount of evidence, they'll issue a warrant immediately. She'll probably be arrested by tomorrow afternoon. Make sure they understand the full scope. This wasn't a momentary lapse in judgment. This was calculated, prolonged, intentional elder abuse with intent to cause harm. They'll understand. Frank, how are you holding up? I considered the question. My hands were steady. My breathing was even. The pain in my chest was emotional rather than physical. I'm all right. Better than I should be, probably. It's strange. I thought confronting her would be harder, but all I feel is relief. That it's over. That she can't hurt me anymore. Arthur reached across the table and gripped my shoulder. You did the right thing. I know it doesn't feel like it right now, but you did. I hope so. They stayed for another hour, helping me clean up and making sure I was steady before they left. David promised to return first thing in the morning to accompany me to the police station. Arthur said he'd check on me tomorrow evening, make sure I was eating and taking my medications properly. After they left, I sat alone in the living room, surrounded by all the familiar furniture and photographs. Pictures of Monica as a child, smiling gap-toothed at the camera. Monica graduating high school, college, getting her real estate license. Monica at Margaret's funeral, standing beside me with her hand on my shoulder, both of us hollow with grief. I took those photographs down one by one and placed them in a box. They belonged to a different life now, a life where my daughter was someone I thought I knew. Tomorrow I would begin building something new, something that didn't include her. My phone buzzed with a text message. Monica, please don't do this. We can work this out. I love you. I deleted it without responding and blocked her number. The house settled into its evening quiet, old wood contracting as the temperature dropped, the furnace humming its familiar rhythm. I checked my medication dispenser, the new one I'd bought that locked with a combination only I knew. The proper pills sat in their proper slots, organized and safe. I took my evening medications with a glass of water, then turned off the lights and climbed the stairs to bed. Margaret's photograph sat on my nightstand, taken during a vacation to Maine years ago. She was laughing in the picture, wind whipping her hair around her face, her eyes bright with joy. I did what I had to do, Maggie, I said to the photograph. I hope you understand. The room offered no response except the settling sounds of an old house holding its stories. I closed my eyes and waited for sleep. The next morning, David arrived at 8:30 sharp. We drove to the police station in silence, the evidence folder heavy on my lap. Detective Sarah Chen met us in a small conference room and listened to my story without interruption. When I finished, she reviewed the video footage, the lab results, the photographs of Monica's notebook. "Mr. Morrison, this is one of the clearest cases of elder abuse I've seen. The premeditation here is extraordinary. I'll need to get statements from your doctor and your lawyer, but based on what you've shown me, we have more than enough for an arrest warrant." "How long will it take?" "A few hours, maybe less. Do you know where your daughter is currently?" "Probably at her apartment downtown. I have the address." Detective Chen made notes. "We'll pick her up this afternoon. Mr. Morrison, I want you to understand what happens next. There will be a trial. You'll have to testify. Your daughter will likely try to mount a defense, claim she was confused or that she meant to help. This will be long and difficult." "I understand. There's also the possibility she'll try to contact you, to convince you to drop the charges or change your story. You need to be prepared for that." "She won't change my mind." "Good. Because elder abuse cases are notoriously difficult to prosecute, we need victims who are willing to follow through." We spent another 2 hours at the station, going over details and signing forms. By the time we finished, it was nearly noon. David drove me home and made sure I had lunch before he left. Then, I was alone with my thoughts in my carefully reorganized house. The arrest happened at 3:30 that afternoon. Detective Chen called to let me know they'd taken Monica into custody without incident. She'd be arraigned in the morning, and I was welcome to attend if I wanted to. I didn't want to, but I went anyway. The courthouse was cold and impersonal, all marble floors and harsh lighting. Monica stood before the judge in an orange jumpsuit, her hair pulled back in a ponytail, her face pale and drawn. When she saw me in the gallery, something flickered in her eyes. Hope, maybe, or desperation. The judge read the charges. Elder abuse, attempted murder, fraud. Each one fell like a hammer blow. Monica's court-appointed attorney entered a plea of not guilty, and bail was set at $100,000. She couldn't make bail. I'd seen to that by making sure the court knew about her financial situation, about the fact that she'd been counting on my life insurance to fund her future. She was remanded to custody pending trial. As the bailiffs led her away, she looked back at me one more time. I couldn't read her expression, couldn't tell if it was anger or sorrow or some combination of both. I didn't look away. She needed to see that I wasn't backing down, that this was real and permanent and final. Outside the courthouse, reporters had gathered. Somehow the story had leaked. Elderly man's daughter charged with attempting to kill him for inheritance. The headlines would be sensational, I knew. People loved stories about family betrayal, about greed and deception and downfall. I walked past the reporters without comment, climbed into David's car, and let him drive me home. The trial took place 3 months later. Those months were strange, suspended. I fell into a routine, my new routine. Wake up, take my proper medications, make breakfast, read the paper. I joined a book club at the library. I started volunteering at the hospital where Margaret had been treated. I learned to be alone with myself in a way I hadn't been since she died. Monica tried to contact me twice from jail. Both times I refused the calls. Her attorney reached out, asking if I'd be willing to meet with her to discuss a possible plea agreement. I declined. This needed to play out completely to reach its natural conclusion. The trial lasted a week. The prosecution presented their case with surgical precision, the video footage, the lab results, the notebook, my testimony, Dr. Reston's testimony, David's account of the dinner where Monica had been confronted. The evidence was overwhelming. Monica's defense tried to argue confusion, mental health issues, a misguided attempt to help that had spiraled out of control. But the notebook undermined everything. Those calculations, that timeline, the clear documentation of intent. There was no explaining that away. I testified on day 3. The prosecutor walked me through everything, from finding the first vitamin bottle to confronting Monica at dinner. I spoke clearly, without emotion, stating facts as I understood them. Monica's attorney tried to shake my testimony during cross-examination, suggesting I was confused, that I'd misinterpreted my daughter's actions, that I was being manipulated by people who wanted to come between us. I looked at Monica while her attorney spoke. She was staring at the table, her hands folded in her lap. She'd lost weight in jail. Her skin had a grayish cast to it. She looked diminished, smaller somehow than she'd been before. I wasn't confused, I said to her attorney. I'm a mechanical engineer. I know how to gather evidence and analyze data, and the data showed clearly that my daughter was systematically trying to harm me. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. When they returned, the verdict was unanimous on all counts. Guilty. Monica didn't react when the verdict was read. She just sat there, still staring at that table, while her attorney put a hand on her shoulder. The judge scheduled sentencing for 2 weeks later. I didn't attend the sentencing hearing. David went in my place and called me afterward with the result. 15 years in state prison with possibility of parole after 10. Restitution to be paid for medical expenses and emotional damages. Permanent restraining order preventing contact with me. She made a statement before the judge handed down the sentence, David told me. She said she was sorry, that she'd lost her way and didn't know how to find her way back, that she hoped someday you might forgive her. Did she sound sincere? I honestly couldn't tell. I thanked David for his help and ended the call. Then I sat in my living room for a long time, watching afternoon light move across the walls. Forgiveness. The word felt foreign. Impossible. How do you forgive someone who looked at you and saw only a dollar figure? Who calculated the value of your death and decided it was worth pursuing? But the alternative was carrying this anger forever, letting it poison whatever time I had left. I'd already lost my wife and my daughter. I didn't want to lose myself too. That evening, I wrote Monica a letter. Not a long one. Just a few paragraphs explaining that while I could never have a relationship with her again, and while I believed the punishment was just, I didn't hate her. I told her I hoped prison would give her time to become someone different, someone better, someone who understood that people aren't assets to be liquidated when convenient. I mailed the letter the next morning and tried to put it out of my mind. Life continued. I sold the house a year later. It was too big for one person, too full of ghosts. I moved into a smaller condominium closer to downtown, where I could walk to the library and the hospital and the coffee shop I'd started frequenting. I made new friends. Arthur introduced me to his book club, which met twice a month. I took a woodworking class at the community center and discovered I enjoyed making small furniture pieces. I started traveling again, places Margaret and I had always talked about visiting: Ireland, New Zealand, Scotland. The anger faded gradually, replaced by something more like sadness. Not for Monica exactly, but for the relationship we'd had, or thought we'd had. For the illusion of family that had sustained me after Margaret's death. For the daughter I'd believed in, who had never really existed. At least, not in the way I'd imagined. Monica wrote to me twice from prison. Both times I returned the letters unopened. Some bridges, once burned, can't be rebuilt. The foundation is too damaged. You have to accept the loss and move forward into whatever comes next. 7 years after her sentencing, I received a letter from the parole board asking if I wanted to provide a statement regarding Monica's early release. She'd served her minimum sentence with good behavior, completed various rehabilitation programs, earned a college degree through prison correspondence courses. The board wanted to know if I felt she'd be a danger to me if released. I thought about it for a long time before responding. Then, I wrote a careful letter explaining that while I had no desire to have contact with her, I didn't believe she was violent or posed a physical threat. What she'd done had been calculated but nonviolent. I believed she deserved a chance to rebuild her life, as long as that life didn't intersect with mine. The parole board released her 3 months later. David called to let me know, to make sure the restraining order was still in place and understood by all parties. Monica was prohibited from contacting me or coming within 500 feet of my home. I wondered sometimes what she was doing, whether she'd found work, whether she'd learned anything from her years in prison. But I didn't seek answers to those questions. Some doors are better left closed. On what would have been Margaret's 80th birthday, I visited her grave and brought the yellow roses she'd always loved. The cemetery was quiet, peaceful, in the way only old cemeteries can be. I sat on the stone bench and talked to her the way I still did occasionally, updating her on my life, my travels, my small victories and ordinary days. I survived, I told her. In case you were worried, I'm still here, still taking my medications properly, still showing up for the life I have left. The wind moved through the trees, carrying the scent of autumn leaves and distant rain. I hope you're not too disappointed in how things turned out with Monica. I know you wanted better for her. We both did. But sometimes people make choices that take them to places we can't follow. All we can do is protect ourselves and hope they find their way back eventually. I stayed until the shadows grew long, then drove home to my small condominium where everything was exactly as I'd left it. Safe, secure, organized, mine. That night, I took my medications from their locked container, the same ritual I'd performed every night for the past 7 years. The pills were correct, verified, prescribed by doctors I trusted. I swallowed them with water and checked them off in my medication log. Then I settled into my chair with a book and a cup of tea and let myself exist in this moment, this carefully constructed life I'd built from the ruins of the old one. Outside my window, the city lights began to glow against the darkening sky. Somewhere out there, Monica was living her own life, rebuilding from her own ruins. We would never share space again, never break bread at the same table, never pretend to be family. But we were both surviving in our separate spheres, carrying our separate damage. And maybe that was the only resolution possible. Not forgiveness, not reconciliation, just separate survival, marked by distance and the hard-won knowledge that trust, once shattered, leaves scars that never fully heal. I turned the page of my book and continued reading, the tea warm in my hands, my heart beating its steady rhythm, my medications doing exactly what they were supposed to do, keeping me alive, one day at a time.